Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the peasant who rose above samurai, the boy with no name, Min 1537. In a poor village in Owari province, a baby was born to a peasant family so destitute they couldn't afford to give him a proper name. His father was an ashigaruwa, foot soldier, barely above a farmer, whose job was to die so real samurai wouldn't have to. The boy was called Hyoshimaru. No family name, no prospects. In feudal Japan's rigid class system, he would die exactly as he was born. Nameless, powerless, forgotten. But this peasant boy who would become known as Toyotomi Hideyoshi refused to accept his fate. Against impossible odds, he would rise to become the most powerful man in Japan, unifying a nation torn by a century of civil war. This is his true story. The world of endless war. Hideyoshi was born into the Sengoku Jidai, the age of warring states. For over 100 years, Japan had been tearing itself apart. The emperor was powerless. The shogun commanded no authority. Hundreds of warlords battled constantly for dominance. It was an age of betrayal where sons killed fathers and brothers, murdered brothers. The average life expectancy was 30 years. For a peasant soldier like Hideyoshi's father, far less. When Hideyoshi was 7, his father died in some forgotten battle. His mother remarried another peasant soldier. Young Hideyoshi had no future until he decided to create one. He was sent to a Buddhist temple to become a monk. He ran away. In feudal Japan, rejecting your assigned station was unthinkable. But Hideyoshi didn't care about society's rules. He cared about opportunity. The Sandalbarian 1558, at age 21. Hideyoshi made the decision that changed everything. He entered the service of Oda Nobunaga, ruthless young warlord planning to unify all of Japan. Nobunaga was brilliant, brutal, and utterly without mercy. But he had one revolutionary quality. He promoted based on merit, not bloodline. If you were useful, you rose. If you failed, you died. Hideyoshi started at the absolute bottom, warming Nobunaga's sandals. It was servant's work that nobles wouldn't even acknowledge, but Hideyoshi understood. Proximity to power was itself power one cold winter night. Nobunaga returned to find his sandals warm, not heated by fire, but tucked inside Hideyoshi's clothing, warmed by body heat. This single act revealed everything about Hideyoshi. He anticipated needs, he found creative solutions. He valued excellence over comfort. He understood symbolism Nobunaga noticed. From that moment, Hideyoshi began to rise. The warrior's genius by the 1560s. Hideyoshi had become one of Nobunaga's generals, not because he was a great swordsman. He was only average as a fighter, but because of his brilliance as a strategist. Unlike traditional samurai who valued honor and direct confrontation, Hideyoshi believed in winning by any means. He bribed enemies rather than fight them. He used deception and psychological warfare. He built supply chains that kept armies fed when others starved. He negotiated impossible alliances. Those are Nine Castle during the 1567 siege of Inabiyama Castle. Nobunaga's forces had been stalled for months. The castle was considered impregnable. Hideyoshi proposed building a fort directly across from the castle overnight. Everyone thought he was insane. Building a fort required lumber, stone, laborers, organization, and time. But Hideyoshi prefabricated fort sections in secret, then assembled them in one night like a deadly jigsaw puzzle. When defenders woke at dawn, they saw an enemy fortress where none had existed. The psychological impact was devastating. The castle soon fell. Stories like this spread. The peasant who could accomplish what born samurai could not. Master of logistics while others sought glory in battle. Hideyoshi mastered the unglamorous work that actually won wars. Supply chains, resource allocation, road building, food distribution. This boring administrative work was what actually won wars by 1573. Hideyoshi had been promoted to daimyo, feudal lord. The peasant boy now ruled land and commanded armies. The moment that changed Japan on June 21, 1582. Everything changed. Oda Nobunaga, the most powerful man in Japan, was betrayed by his own general, Akechi Mitsuhide. Surrounded at Hanaji Temple. With minimal guards, Nobunaga committed ritual suicide. Suddenly, violently, the question everyone asked, who would replace him? The great return when Hideyoshi heard the news. He was leading an army in western Japan, 200 kilometers from Kyoto. He understood instantly. Speed was everything. Whoever avenged Nobunaga first would be seen as his rightful successor in an extraordinary feat. Hideyoshi made peace with his current enemy within days, marched his entire army back to Nishiraz, Kyoto, in under 10 days, gathered allies along the way. This forced march, the Chigoku Gigisari, remains one of history's most impressive military movements. 13 days after Nobunaga's death, Hideyoshi confronted Mitsuhide at the Battle of Yamazaki. The battle was swift and decisive. Mitsuhide was killed. While fleeing, Hideyoshi had avenged Nobunaga and positioned himself as the successor. The rise to power, but claiming power wasn't automatic. Other generals had ambitions. Shibata Katsui, Nobunaga's oldest retainer, Tokugawa Ieyasu, Nobunaga's most powerful ally, various Oda family members, Hideyoshi outmaneuvered them all. He defeated Katsui at Shizugatak in 1583. He fought Ieyasu to a stalemate, then offered a generous alliance that Ieyasu pragmatically accepted in 1585. Hideyoshi achieved something unprecedented. He was appointed Kampo regent to the emperor. This position was traditionally reserved for the highest noble families. Hideyoshi had no noble lineage whatsoever. The emperor even granted him a noble surname. Toyotomi, the peasant with no name, now bore one of Japan's most prestigious titles, the unification of Japan from 1585 to 1591. Hideyoshi accomplished what no one had done in over a century. He unified all of Japan. 1585, Shikaku-hi conquered the island through a combination of military pressure and diplomatic offers. The message was clear: submit peacefully or be destroyed. Either way, you will submit. 1587. Kushuhi assembled an overwhelming force of 200,000 men and invaded the southern island. But rather than simply crushing the powerful Shimazu clan, he offered honorable terms. They surrendered. 1590. Odawara, the last major resistance, was the HJ clan's Odawara castle, which had never fallen. Hideyoshi turned the siege into a festival. He brought 220,000 people and set up camp with tea ceremonies, theater performances, merchants, and entertainment. The message: we can sit here comfortably forever. You're trapped, not us. After 3 months, the HJ surrendered. By Yichen Wu Bai Jushi, Japan was unified for the first time in over a century. The laws that froze Japan with Japan unified. Hideyoshi enacted reforms that would reshape society for 3 centuries. The Sword Hunt 1588, he ordered all peasants to surrender their weapons. The official reason: melting them down for a great Buddha statue. The real purpose: disarmed peasants couldn't rebel. Only samurai could bear weapons. The bitter irony: the peasant who rose by breaking barriers now enforced them more rigidly than ever. The class system: 1591. Hideyoshi formalized Japan into 4 rigid classes. Samurai, warriors, farmers, artisans. Movement between classes was forbidden. Born a farmer, die a farmer. No exceptions. This system would last 250 years. Hideyoshi had climbed the ladder, then pulled it up behind him. The greatest failure: by 1591, Hideyoshi controlled all Japan. He was 60 years old. He should have been satisfied, but he wanted more. to invade Korea, conquer China, and rule all of East Asia. The Korean invasions 1592 to 1598. The first invasion in 1592 initially succeeded. Japanese forces captured Seoul in 3 weeks. Then, everything went wrong. Korean guerrilla warfare Admiral Yi Sun-sin destroyed supply ships in China, sent massive reinforcements winter, and disease devastated. Japanese forces by 1593, the invasion had stalled. Peace negotiations dragged on for years. A second invasion in 1597 made even less progress. When Hideyoshi died on September 18, 1598, Japanese forces withdrew, having accomplished nothing except massive destruction. The Korean campaigns were Hideyoshi's greatest disaster, a failure that revealed his limits and weakened his clan. The fall Hideyoshi's death exposed the fundamental weakness of his empire. It depended on his personal genius, not stable institutions. He left a 5-year-old son, Hidori, under the protection of 5 regions including Tokugawa, Ieyasu, within 2 years. The regions were fighting for control. At the 1600 Battle of Sekigahara, Ieyasu defeated pro-Toyotomi forces. In 1615, he besieged Osaka Castle. Hidewari committed suicide. The Toyotomi bloodline was extinguished. Hideyoshi's empire lasted barely 17 years after his death. The famous Japanese saying captures it perfectly. Nobunaga mixed the cake, Hideyoshi baked it, and Ieyasu ate it. The legacy Hideyoshi's life was a study in contradictions. The rise, he proved a peasant could become the most powerful man in Japan. The closing, once powerful, he ensured no other peasant could follow his path. The warrior, he ordered countless deaths and launched brutal invasions. The patron, he sponsored tea ceremony, built magnificent temples, and promoted arts. The unifier, he brought peace to a war-torn nation. The failure, his Korean campaigns were disasters that killed hundreds of thousands. What can we learn? 1. Your starting point doesn't determine your destination. Hideyoshi had literally nothing. Through intelligence, hard work, and strategic thinking, he reached the absolute pinnacle. 2. Proximity to power is power. Starting as a sandal-bearer gave him access.
Master the unglamorous work. While others chased glory, he mastered logistics, the boring work that actually wins wars. 5. Speed creates opportunity. His rapid return after Nobunaga's death positioned him to seize power. 6. Institutions outlast individuals. His genius unified Japan, but without stable institutions, his empire collapsed. Ieyasu's system lasted 268 years. 7. Your greatest strength can become your greatest weakness. The restless ambition that drove his rise led to the disastrous Korean invasions. Conclusion. The man who changed what was possibly Toyotomi Hideyoshi was not the greatest warrior, not the most cultured, not the most visionary, but he was the most resourceful, the most adaptable, the most relentlessly determined. From literally nothing, no name, no status, no prospects, he became one of the 3 great unifiers of Japan. His empire lasted barely a generation, but his legend has lasted 5 centuries, because his story proves something fundamental. Where you start matters less than where you're willing to go. The barriers society places in your path can be overcome by exceptional ability, strategic thinking, and relentless determination. The peasant who rose above samurai didn't just change his own fate, he changed what people believed was possible, and that, perhaps, is his greatest legacy. Quick timeline: 1537. Born a peasant in Owari, 1558, enters Nobunaga's service, age 21, 1582, Nobunaga assassinated. Hideyoshi's rapid return, 1585. Appointed Kampuku, given surname Toyotomi, 1591, completes unification of Japan, 1592-98. Failed Korean invasions, 1598. Dies age 62, 1615. Toyotomi clan destroyed.